Hey everybody, Aaron Herman of the Open Scroll here. Today is Sunday, January 29th, about 10:30 a.m., which means we're now in the 7th day, the 11th month on the Lord's calendar, and I'm here with Bob Schlenker.
Hey everybody, we're going to get into Romans chapter 1 a little bit. And it's a study that I began a while back, and I had to interrupt that study because I needed to look at the expanded context because I was doing a structural study. And so I put out this book of Romans and its exquisite wrapper study, and we did a video on that. I took the opportunity because of the added insight into the overall structure to do a little appending to my Romans 11 study, adding in its companion text from chapter 15. And in Romans 1, the issue that I had when I was trying to look at it as a single self-contained unit, it didn't really lend itself to that. So I had to expand the study to see what exactly was the unit in Romans chapter 1 that was self-contained. And I also found a section that it actually corresponded to as a more remote companion. So with the book of Romans, you can take a look at that, the study on the wrapper, the video, and it'll be very informative. And we had one showing pretty much the mechanics of it, which a lot of people just find boring and repetitive, or mind-numbingly boring. But it's the technical stuff, and it'll help you kind of navigate through. But we've done so many of these videos that the same means of navigation, the same way things work, we don't need to repeat that all the time. So today is going to be pretty much lacking in that. But Aaron, in the last one that we did on Romans in the book and its wrapper, Aaron shared his observations and I shared a couple. And there was some good stuff there. I really enjoyed that. So what we're going to do today is go into this study of Romans 1. And we're going to take a look at a couple of observations that really come to light. I'm going to make it a little larger in a little bit, but I want to show you the basic structure here. What I've done is, you can see this yellow line. This is dividing what's above from below. The line represents the intermediary text between 8:32 and 12:1, which spans from Romans 2:1 through 11:36. And that's got its own structure to it. We're not really interested in it, but the lines there is kind of a placeholder. So what's not covered in the Romans wrapper begins in verse 17, goes through to the end of the chapter, verse 32. And this corresponds with its remote companion from chapter 12, verses 1 and 2. And how do we know? Well, the same way we know there's any other kind of correspondence. There's a symmetry involved, and there's a thematic comparison being made. And so I'm going to click on this just to show you that I've got lots of information in here, but what I really want to share is limited. So Aaron, if you would please just read this last paragraph for us in the companion notes.
With this symmetrical pairing of texts, the author invites us to compare them to discover and explore the profound contrast that exists between them. This should help you gain some useful insight into the spiritual reality of an issue that has become so very controversial in this hour of the age and, Lord willing, inspire you and facilitate that transformation wrought by the renewing of your mind.
That's valuable. Yeah. If you're a Christian, you should get it. This should really speak to you. And could this kind of presentation actually do that? Well, yeah. And I believe that's the point. And this is why I've done this now. This isn't giving us a key to learning about when time is going to be reset. It's not showing us the nearness of the revealing of the lawless one. It's not dealing with a lot of the things that we typically do, but this is one of the key issues of the Christian life, which is a big deal. And more than anything, really, that's the crisis of the hour. So as I close this, I'm going to expand the size, and we're going to take a look at 12.1. And what we're going to find here in 12.1 and 2 is a theme, and we're going to look up and we're going to see that the theme exists up on top in chapter 1, and it's in two parts. There's a comparison by way of agreement, and that's very small, but it's the first part. And then there's going to be a comparison by way of contrast, and this should really speak loudly to you. So Aaron, would you read for us Romans 12:1 and 2, please?
Therefore I urge you, brethren, by the mercies of God, to present your bodies a living and holy sacrifice, acceptable to God, which is your spiritual service of worship. And do not be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind, so that you may prove what the will of God is, that which is good and acceptable and perfect.
And I'm not going to talk about the structure, because if you explore it, you'll see for yourself exactly what's going on and why it is organized the way it is. And I will make a point about tripling, and all of these have a tripled structure. There's a doubled, there's a special kind here in this section, and there's a special kind that's halved, basically. So there's a doubled, a halved, and then a very special kind, 4 plus 4 plus 4. And what we have in this is an emphasis that's being added to this part of the message, which you may know is the more controversial part of the chapter. And by repeating the first part not once but twice, which is unique to the form here, the author adds emphasis to the message. That's what that does. And that's important to know where the emphasis is. That's the author's own pointing of where the emphasis is. And there's a reason for that, because of the contrast with what Aaron read from chapter 12. Now, here when I click on this comment box, it spans verse 17. I just highlight the point that while the balance of the chapter matches to its first level companion of 12:1 to 2 by way of contrast, and by balance of the chapter, I'm talking about verses 18 to 32, right? So 18 to 32 matches 12:1 and 2 in the way of contrast. Here in this first structural unit, I'm talking about verse 17, we find a match in the way of agreement on the theme of the operative faith of the righteous. And when you focus on these things, ask the Lord to give you more insight, and specifically into your life and what He would have you to take away from this. And I believe it's profound what the Lord may have for you. So the rest of the way the structure unfolds, you can explore it by hovering your mouse over the different sections, and it should be very apparent because of the highlighting. It's interesting that in verse 21 and verse 32 they correspond, and actually you got to include 22 up there, I guess. So 21 and 22 matches to verse 32 of chapter 1, and this halving is really interesting and significant. The rest of it you can explore for yourself. This has got the most granular structure here in 26D through 27, and you'll notice that that's the absolutely most controversial part, given the most emphasis by reason of its most granular structure. Yeah. So one thing that I think is important to make a point about here is that God's highlighting of what's important and His pairing of lines of text to invite us to take away specific insights about why and why not, asking some penetrating questions. Why this, not that? What are you telling us? What aren't you telling us? It's an esoteric messaging system by design. And it's not for everybody. It's for those who are particularly drawn, who have the ability to meditate on these things, who have the desire to glean what is there that may be gleaned. These things are important. And one thing I want to point out that may not be completely obvious is the fact that the root of all this behavior is spiritual. Spiritual. And on one hand, it deals with worshiping the one true God. And that's our primary interest. On the other hand, it deals very specifically with idolatry. Very specifically, single word, idolatry. That's the spiritual root. And because God is a God of love, and a lot of people bandy around this matter of love and tell lies about it, you have to realize that this is a word from a God who is love. And this is something that we should embrace because there's a reward. There's a benefit now and a great reward in the future. Does this put us into conflict with the world and the worldly? Oh, yeah. And by design. And that's absolutely necessary. And so I encourage you to draw in and press in to get what the Lord would have you to get from this. This, in this particular hour of the age, is not controversial for no reason. And because of the lack of attention that's being given to it, because people are afraid of being put in jail and so on and so forth, it's all the more necessary. So this is why I believe I was inspired to go after Romans 1 now. And I was inspired to go after it even before they dumped our YouTube channel. Yeah. Anyways, Aaron, do you have any observations to make about this?
Just the one thing that comes to mind, words of Jesus in the gospel there. Those who wish to be my disciples, deny yourselves, pick up your cross, and follow me. That's just the one thing that comes to mind as I read through this presentation.
Echo, echo, echo. Yep, resonating with me. Thanks, Aaron. Well, God bless you, everybody. Bye-bye.